Have you ever stopped to listen to the words you speak when no one is watching? Not the casual phrases, the jokes, or the small talk, but the ones that slip out when you're frustrated, afraid, or just trying to sound important. Every word you utter carries a weight far greater than you realize. It shapes how the world sees you, yes, but more importantly, it shapes how you see yourself. Those careless, thoughtless phrases that seem harmless at first, they leave marks. They linger in your mind, echoing long after the moment has passed, quietly molding your confidence, your courage, your potential. And here's the hard truth. If you don't control your words will control you. When a man repeatedly speaks without thought, when he defaults to excuses, dismissals, or empty bravado, he isn't just failing to impress others, he's failing himself. Every time you say something that diminishes your own value, you are reinforcing a version of yourself that is smaller, weaker, and limited. You might not notice it at first because the damage is invisible, subtle, creeping in like shadow over a bright morning. But over time, it compounds. Confidence erodes, ambition fades, and doors that could have been yours quietly close because of the barrier your own words have built. And yet, there is incredible power in this truth, a power that most men never see. Because while words can trap, they can also liberate. When you begin to notice the patterns, when you recognize the phrases that undermine you, something remarkable happens. Choice emerges. You start to see that every sentence is an opportunity, a chance to build yourself up rather than break yourself down. Every word can either pull you deeper into regret or push you toward growth. Every time you speak with awareness, you are shaping the man you are becoming. Right now, you have a chance to see the man you've been through his own words, to confront the things you've said that held you back, and to imagine the man you could become when every phrase, every declaration, every sentence works in your favor. Think about the freedom, the confidence, the respect you could command just by mastering the simplest, most overlooked tool you possess, your voice. The way you talk to the world begins with the way you talk to yourself. And when you speak with power, clarity, and intention, you ignite a chain reaction. Your thoughts follow your words, your actions follow your thoughts, and before you know it, your life follows the direction you choose rather than the direction fear or ignorance dictates. Stay with this truth, because by the end of this message, you will understand not just what a stupid man says, but why he says it, and more importantly, how to never fall into the same traps. You will see the 6 phrases that silently steal opportunity and strength, and you will discover how to transform your speech, your mindset, and your future. This is more than awareness. It's a chance to claim the man you are capable of being, a man whose words carry weight, wisdom, and unstoppable power. Every moment you continue listening, every word you hear can bring you closer to the life you are meant to live. You are not here to repeat the mistakes of others. You are here to rise above them, starting with the very language you choose to speak. Every time a man hides behind excuses, he is quietly surrendering a piece of his power. It might feel safe, comfortable even, to blame circumstances, to point at the world and say, "It's not my fault," or "I couldn't help it." Excuses are seductive because they offer immediate relief from responsibility, a fleeting sense that you are still in control while secretly giving control away. But comfort is deceptive. It wraps around you like a chain, soft and familiar, and keeps you from stepping into the arena where real growth, real respect, and real achievement exist. The man who constantly excuses himself is the man who will never fully see his own potential. Every time he says, "I can't," or "it's not the right time," he is building a wall between himself and the life he dreams of. There is a quiet, almost invisible pain in excuses that goes unnoticed until it is too late. You may feel frustrated, dissatisfied, or restless, but the blame always lands somewhere else. The mind comforts itself with reasons and justifications, but deep down, there is a gnawing awareness that you are capable of more. Science tells us that humans who take full ownership of their actions, successes and failures alike, develop resilience, confidence, and a sense of mastery. The ones who hide behind excuses fall into a cycle of learned helplessness, their brains rewiring themselves to expect failure, to avoid risk, to remain small. You do not want to live that life. You were not born to settle for comfort that steals your fire. Every moment spent making excuses is a moment stolen from your potential. Every sentence you speak in self-defense is a chance to rewrite your story that slips away. But here is the truth that most men never realize. Accountability is liberating. When you own your choices, you reclaim your power. When you say, I am responsible for this outcome and I will find a way forward, you ignite a force within yourself that excuses can never touch. Your brain begins to recognize possibility instead of limitation. Your actions begin to align with your ambition. Your life begins to expand because you have stopped shrinking to protect your ego. Imagine the strength that comes when you stop pointing fingers and start pointing yourself toward action. Imagine the doors that open when you no longer waste energy defending failure or avoiding discomfort. The courage to own your life is not a one-time act. It is a constant, conscious choice, a language you speak every day. Each declaration of responsibility is a brick in the foundation of the man you are becoming. Each refusal to hide behind excuses builds muscle in your character, sharpens your mind, and strengthens your confidence. There is a reward in this awareness, a tangible and immediate reward. When you stop blaming the world begins to notice you. Opportunities appear, doors open, and the energy that once went into defending yourself is now channeled into creation, growth, and progress. Fear loses its grip. Self-doubt fades because you have replaced it with ownership. Every phrase, every thought, every decision that used to excuse weakness now fuels strength. And you realize something profound. The life you want has been waiting for you all along, but it cannot find you if you are hiding behind excuses. You must stand, claim responsibility, and move forward. That is how power is born, and that is how a man becomes unstoppable. Many men mistake loudness for strength, thinking that projecting confidence through words alone will earn respect. They believe that ego and bluster can substitute for knowledge, courage, or effort. But the truth is far harsher. Words without depth, confidence without action, pride without substance, they are illusions that crumble under pressure. When a man clings to bravado, he is often hiding fear. Fear of being challenged, fear of being exposed, fear of confronting the truth about himself. The louder he speaks to convince the world, the quieter his soul becomes and the further he drifts from the real power he was born to wield. Psychology shows us that overconfidence and arrogance are often masks for insecurity. The mind that needs to appear invincible is one that secretly doubts itself. Every phrase meant to impress or intimidate others actually narrows the thinker's vision, blocking learning, empathy, and connection. The man who brags, belittles, or dominates conversations through ego alone is building walls, not bridges. He is closing off the very experiences, relationships, and opportunities that could push him toward greatness. Words should be tools of creation, not armor for weakness. Each careless statement is a lost chance to grow, to inspire, to lead, to be respected for the substance he carries rather than the noise he makes. You have a choice in how your words shape you. True strength does not shout. True strength does not need validation. It radiates quietly through action, through thought, through discipline, and through a willingness to be wrong, to listen, to learn. Every time you resist the urge to inflate your ego, you take a step closer to mastery over yourself. Every time you choose humility over pride, curiosity over certainty, intelligence over posturing, you are rewriting the code of your mind and shaping the life you truly deserve. The emotional cost of clinging to ego is subtle but relentless. It isolates, it blinds, it traps a man in a cycle of superficial victories that leave him hollow. He may feel respected for a moment, but respect built on fear or pretense is fragile and fleeting. The world sees through it, and more importantly, he knows it deep down. That inner awareness creates tension, anxiety, and dissatisfaction. No achievement, no material gain, no external approval can fill the void left by a life spent trying to appear powerful rather than actually being powerful. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine a man who speaks with clarity, who chooses words that reflect truth, wisdom, and courage. Imagine The impact of phrases that build instead of break, that invite collaboration instead of competition, that command respect because they are rooted in substance. Every word becomes a declaration of who he is, every statement a step toward the man he wants to be. That is the real form of strength, the kind that cannot be stolen, cannot be ignored, and cannot be broken. Your voice, when used with purpose, becomes a weapon and a shield at the same time. It defends your values, inspires others, and pulls you toward your highest potential. The energy once wasted on ego and empty bravado transforms into momentum, focus, and action. The man who masters this principle moves differently in the world. He attracts opportunities, commands respect, and inspires trust without trying. The question is simple. Do you want to be loud for attention or quiet for power? The choice defines not only your words, but the life that follows them. A man who constantly complains is a man who refuses to take control of his own life. Complaints are more than words. They are declarations of surrender. Every "this isn't fair" or "why me" chips away at your energy, your focus, and your power. Complaining creates a mental loop that conditions the mind to see obstacles instead of opportunities, failures instead of solutions, and limits instead of potential. The more a man voices dissatisfaction without action, the more he trains himself to expect defeat, to feel powerless, and to accept mediocrity as inevitable. Complaints are seductive because they feel like release, but they are actually chains disguised as comfort. Psychologists have long studied the impact of negative speech on mindset. People who habitually complain experience higher stress levels, weaker problem-solving skills, and diminished resilience. Their brains begin to focus on scarcity instead of abundance, on problems instead of solutions, on excuses instead of ownership. Every word spoken in frustration or blame reinforces neural pathways that make negativity automatic, almost reflexive. You are literally programming your mind to limit yourself each time you voice a grievance instead of taking decisive action. To speak is to shape your reality, and the man who complains constantly is quietly building the world he fears, brick by brick. Yet there is immense power in realizing this truth. Awareness is the first step toward freedom. The man who notices his own complaints, who understands their cost, can transform them into catalysts for action. When dissatisfaction arises, it is not a signal to vent or retreat. It is a signal to engage, to problem solve, to grow. Each time you replace a complaint with a question, a plan, or a commitment, you are redirecting the energy of frustration into progress. You are training your mind to see challenges as invitations rather than threats, to take responsibility rather than assign blame, to step forward instead of step back. Imagine a life where complaints no longer dominate your speech. Imagine conversations filled with clarity, purpose, and solutions instead of bitterness or regret. Every word you speak becomes a tool to build momentum, attract opportunity, and command respect. The world responds to men who act rather than moan, who solve rather than criticize, who rise rather than retreat. Your words create vibrations that ripple far beyond the moment. They set the tone for your actions, your relationships, and your future. The man who transforms complaints into constructive energy transforms his entire life. There is also a hidden reward to this mastery mental freedom. When you refuse to complain, you break cycles of negativity that drag on for years, sometimes decades. You free your mind from the subtle weight of self-pity and doubt. You reclaim energy that was wasted on resentment and channel it into creation, growth, and influence. Complaints become obsolete because your focus is fixed on solutions, your attention is sharp, and your momentum is unstoppable. The question you must ask yourself is simple but profound. Do you want to continue investing in weakness, or will you redirect every word, every thought, every action into power? A man who complains is a man who waits. A man who chooses action, responsibility, and solution-driven speech is a man who commands his life. You are capable of being that man. Every time you silence a complaint and speak with purpose, you are not just changing your words, you are changing your destiny. A man who constantly brags reveals not strength, but insecurity. Every exaggerated story, every boastful claim, every attempt to impress others with achievements or possessions is a mask. It is a way to distract from the inner voice that whispers doubt, fear, and inadequacy. Bragging is a loud declaration of need. Need for validation, need for admiration, need to prove worth. And no matter how convincing it seems to the world, the mind of the man who brags knows the truth. Deep inside, he measures himself not by what he has, but by what he fears he lacks. Psychology tells us that true confidence does not seek attention. Real strength is quiet, steady, and grounded in self-awareness. The man who constantly boasts is attempting to fill a void that cannot be filled with words. He mistakes attention for respect, noise for authority, and admiration for influence. But the world sees through it. People are drawn not to the man who shouts about his successes, but to the man whose calm presence, integrity, and action speak louder than anything he could claim. Every boast is an invisible wall between him and genuine connection. Every claim a barrier to authentic growth. Every attempt to impress a delay in becoming the man he truly wants to be. Bragging also steals from potential. When energy is spent inflating ego, there is less energy available for learning, for improving, for taking meaningful risks. Each self-centered statement is a distraction from the work that builds real achievement. A man who brags remains focused on perception rather than substance. He becomes trapped in a loop where appearances matter more than results, where image outweighs reality. And over time, the mind adapts, valuing superficiality over depth, external approval over inner mastery. This is the subtle poison that sabotages ambition, erodes confidence, and diminishes influence. There is a profound freedom in letting go of the need to boast. When a man stops speaking to impress and starts speaking to express, to teach, or to inspire, he taps into a deeper power. His words gain weight because they are grounded in truth, not exaggeration. His presence becomes magnetic because it is authentic, not performative. The world responds to substance, consistency, and quiet strength. Every moment spent cultivating real skill, real wisdom, and real integrity compounds into influence that cannot be fabricated or stolen. The man who replaces bragging with competence and humility commands respect effortlessly without forcing it through noise. The reward for abandoning this trap is immediate and undeniable. Mental clarity replaces anxiety about how others perceive you. Focus replaces distraction. Momentum replaces stagnation. Your energy, once diluted by the need to impress, now fuels creation, action, and growth. Every word becomes intentional, every statement aligned with purpose, every conversation a reflection of confidence rooted in reality. You are no longer performing for approval. You are building a life that naturally attracts it. Ask yourself, are you using words to mask weakness or to build strength? Are you seeking attention or commanding respect? The answer determines not only how the world hears you, but how you hear yourself. Bragging is the language of insecurity. Humility, action, and truth are the language of power. The man who masters this principle speaks less, does more, and achieves more than any boast could ever promise. Your words are shaping you. Choose them wisely. A man who constantly interrupts reveals more than impatience. He reveals a lack of respect for the flow of thought, for the perspective of others, and ultimately for himself. Every cut-in, every overtalk point, every dismissal of another voice is a silent admission that he fears being ignored, being irrelevant, or being exposed. The need to dominate conversation is rarely about winning an argument. It is about proving that he exists, that he matters, and that the world must acknowledge him on his terms. But in truth, the more he interrupts, the less he is heard, and the more his influence quietly erodes. Research in communication psychology makes it clear listening is a powerful tool for influence, growth, and connection. The mind that learns to pause, to absorb, and to reflect gains insight that the loudest voice cannot access. Every time a man interrupts, he closes a door to understanding, empathy, and wisdom. Every conversation becomes a competition rather than a collaboration. And while he may feel dominant in the moment, he is quietly reinforcing habits that limit his growth, damage his relationships, and obscure his true potential. The world respects the man who listens before he speaks, who considers before he reacts, and who speaks with clarity, intention, and patience. Interrupting is not just a social flaw, It is a symptom of an untrained mind. It is the mind that fears silence, fears reflection, and fears vulnerability. Every unspoken thought, every pause in a conversation becomes a mirror revealing insecurities he cannot face. The impulse to speak over others is a way to escape the discomfort of stillness and self-examination. But growth never comes from filling silence with noise. Strength comes from the courage to listen, to absorb, and to respond thoughtfully. The energy wasted on cutting others off could be redirected to creation, to learning, to mastery. Imagine the impact of restraint. Imagine the power of a man whose words are measured, whose presence is felt not because he interrupts, but because he chooses his moments. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to understand, to connect, and to influence subtly but profoundly. People are drawn to those who listen, because listening communicates respect, intelligence, and emotional depth. Influence built on interruption is shallow and fleeting. Influence built on careful attention and thoughtful response endures, expands, and commands genuine respect. The man who masters this skill transforms the very nature of his relationships and his opportunities. The mental clarity gained from restraint is another hidden reward. When you stop trying to assert yourself through constant speech, your mind frees itself from distraction, your focus sharpens, and your judgment strengthens. You learn to weigh words before you speak, to recognize the value of silence, and to harness the energy that once went into trying to control every conversation. Every pause becomes a chance to understand, to strategize, and to elevate the quality of every interaction. The man who interrupts less gains far more than the momentary satisfaction of being heard. He gains insight, respect, and influence that cannot be claimed by noise alone. Ask yourself, are you speaking to be understood or to be noticed? Are your words building connection or masking insecurity? The man who interrupts is trapped in a cycle of need. The man who listens and speaks with intention is free, powerful, and magnetic. Mastery over your voice and your presence is mastery over your life. Your silence, when chosen wisely, speaks louder than any interruption ever could. A man who constantly makes excuses chains himself to mediocrity without even realizing it. Every "I can't because" or "it's not my fault" is a choice to surrender power, to hand control of his life to circumstance, to blame, to luck. Excuses are the silent thieves of ambition. They steal energy, focus, and time, replacing possibility with limitation. Each excuse is a voice telling you that your dreams are unreachable, that your potential is conditional, that your effort will never matter. And the truth is, when excuses become habit, they shape identity. The man who excuses becomes the man who believes he is powerless. Psychologists call this learned helplessness. The repeated act of avoiding responsibility rewires the brain to expect failure, to see challenges as insurmountable, and to defer control to outside forces. Every excuse reinforces that pattern. Each time you tell yourself, "I can't," your mind listens. Each time you blame others, your energy drains from action and moves toward justification. Excuses feel safe because they shield you from the discomfort of responsibility, from the fear of failure, from the risk of rejection. But they are a cage. The freedom to live fully, to create impact, to command respect, lies on the other side of that cage. Breaking free from excuses requires brutal honesty. It demands facing the discomfort that comes with ownership. It requires the courage to say, "This is my life. This is my responsibility. This is my power." When a man stops hiding behind excuses, he begins to see opportunities where before he saw obstacles. He begins to feel the energy of action replacing the weight of inaction. The world responds to action, not justification. Doors open not to those who explain why they cannot, but to those who prove they can. Every time you replace an excuse with a decision, a step, or a plan, you reshape your reality. You are no longer a passive observer of your life. You are the force that drives it forward. The discipline of accountability also strengthens character in ways excuses never could. Excuses feed ego and comfort. Ownership feeds resilience, confidence, and integrity. A man who refuses to make excuses develops clarity in thought, sharpness in judgment, and courage in execution. Challenges no longer intimidate him, they refine him. Failures no longer break him, they teach him. Every moment he chooses responsibility over excuse compounds into unstoppable momentum. The energy once wasted on rationalization now fuels creation, growth, and influence. There is a hidden reward here, one that surpasses achievement, self-respect. Nothing empowers a man more than knowing he is fully accountable for his life, no matter the circumstances. Excuses dissolve, and with them, doubt, fear, and limitation. What remains is focus, drive, and confidence. Your words, your actions, and your presence all align with your truth. You are capable. You are in control. You are relentless. Ask yourself, how often do you choose comfort over courage? How many dreams have slipped away because excuses felt easier than action? The man who makes excuses waits for life to happen. The man who refuses excuses creates the life he wants. Your potential cannot be discovered in avoidance. It is forged in accountability, indecision, in relentless pursuit. Every excuse you discard brings you one step closer to mastery over your life, your future, and your destiny. A man who constantly complains traps himself in a world of negativity, blind to the power he holds to change it. Every grievance, every whispered frustration, every sigh of dissatisfaction is a choice to focus on obstacles rather than opportunities, on limitations rather than possibilities. Complaining feels like release, like expression, but in reality, it strengthens chains. The mind that dwells on what is wrong grows blind to what is possible. Every complaint becomes a habit, and habits define a life. Psychology shows that the human brain is wired to reinforce patterns. When a man complains, his focus repeatedly returns to problems, magnifying them, amplifying stress, and reshaping perception. The world begins to feel heavier, relationships strain, and motivation fades. Complaints act like small poison drops, weakening resilience, eroding optimism, and creating a lens of perpetual dissatisfaction. The more a man complains, the less energy he has to seek solutions, to create change, and to step into his true power. Complaining is not an outlet, it is a barrier. The moment a man chooses to stop complaining, he reclaims his power. Silence replaces irritation. Observation replaces judgment. Energy once wasted on lament becomes fuel for action. The mind that chooses solutions over complaints gains clarity, focus, and courage. Complaints dissolve when responsibility is embraced, when problems are faced, when action becomes the answer. Each challenge becomes a teacher, each obstacle a stepping stone, each difficulty a chance to rise. The man who stops complaining begins to see life not as a series of burdens, but as a series of tests designed to strengthen him. There is strength in reframing. When dissatisfaction arises, the choice to respond with clarity rather than complaint reshapes perception and opens doors. Complaining is passive. It seeks sympathy or validation. Action is active. It creates change, earns respect, and commands results. Every solution-oriented response compounds into momentum. The man who stops complaining shifts from being a victim of circumstance to a master of circumstance. He begins to speak less about problems and more about possibilities. He begins to act, to build, to grow. His presence becomes magnetic because it radiates purpose, not negativity. The emotional payoff is immediate and profound. Peace replaces frustration. Confidence replaces doubt. Energy replaces fatigue. Relationships improve because interactions are no longer soaked in criticism, but in contribution. Influence grows because others are drawn to those who inspire action rather than amplify despair. The world responds to the man who sees opportunities where others see obstacles, who acts where others only talk. Complaining diminishes, purpose elevates. Complaints create stagnation, action creates freedom. Ask yourself, how much of your energy has been surrendered to complaints that solve nothing? How often have you focused on what is wrong instead of what can be made right? The man who complains waits for life to improve on its own. The man who chooses action transforms life through focus, determination, and courage. Every complaint you release frees your mind, your spirit, and your potential. Stop feeding negativity and begin cultivating strength. Your voice, your actions, and your presence will resonate far beyond any complaint ever could. A man who constantly brags reveals an insecurity that he tries to mask with noise. Every boast, every exaggerated achievement, every declaration of superiority is a signal not of strength, but of fear. He fears being overlooked, forgotten, or judged. He fears that, without constant reminders of his worth, the world might not see him as significant. Bragging is a loud attempt to control perception, but the louder the claim, the more fragile the foundation. Confidence that is real does not need announcement. True power speaks quietly, consistently, and undeniably through action. Psychologists have studied the effects of self-promotion and found a striking pattern. People who rely on constant bragging often feel inadequate internally. They measure their value through the recognition of others rather than the satisfaction of their own effort. Every boast becomes a crutch, a way to avoid confronting the truth of growth and development. External validation can never replace internal mastery. Every time a man brags, instead of proving through action, he trades genuine influence for temporary attention, fleeting admiration, and shallow approval. The audience he seeks to impress senses the insecurity beneath the surface, and respect slips further away with each empty claim. The power of restraint is transformative. The man who achieves quietly and consistently builds a reputation that commands attention without effort. His actions create impact, his results speak louder than words, and his presence exudes authenticity. There is no need to inflate accomplishments, because every success carries its own weight. Mastery of skill, discipline, and character radiates naturally. The world cannot ignore it. Confidence rooted in achievement does not need explanation because it exists independently of recognition. Those who boast often crave acknowledgement. Those who achieve consistently earn it effortlessly. Bragging also steals energy from what matters most. While attention is focused on appearing impressive, action slows, reflection diminishes, and growth stalls. Time spent talking about success is time not spent creating it. Every claim made to others is a moment lost in the pursuit of actual mastery. The man who channels his energy into effort rather than expression multiplies his power, strengthens his skills, and deepens his understanding. His results compound silently, leaving a legacy that words alone could never achieve. The emotional reward of humility is profound. When a man stops seeking approval through boasting, he gains freedom. The freedom to focus on excellence, the freedom to take risks without fear of judgment, the freedom to measure success by his own standards. Confidence replaces insecurity, purpose replaces pretense, and respect follows naturally. People are drawn not to those who tell them how great they are, but to those whose actions demonstrate greatness effortlessly. Influence built on humility is durable, magnetic, and far-reaching. Ask yourself, how often do you speak to impress rather than to create? How many moments of potential growth are lost to the need for recognition? The man who brags waits for validation. The man who acts achieves impact. Your energy is precious. Use it to build, to grow, to master your craft. Let your results speak so loudly that no words are needed. True power is quiet, unwavering, and undeniable, and it begins the moment you stop boasting and start becoming. A man who refuses to learn traps himself in a cycle of stagnation. Every time he dismisses advice, ignores feedback, or rejects new knowledge, he chooses comfort over growth. He believes that what he knows is enough, that change is unnecessary, that his perspective is final. But life does not reward stagnation. The world evolves, challenges shift, and opportunities appear only to those willing to adapt. Knowledge is the tool of power, and a refusal to learn is a refusal to wield that power. Science confirms that the brain thrives on growth. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, depends on challenge, curiosity, and learning. A man who shuts down learning blocks this process. He becomes rigid, predictable, and vulnerable. Every rejection of knowledge narrows his mind, hardens his habits, and diminishes his potential. While others innovate, adapt, and expand, he remains trapped in the limitations of yesterday. Ignorance is not bliss, it is the silent architect of failure. To embrace learning is to embrace life itself. Every lesson, whether it comes from success, failure, or the insight of others, is a brick in the foundation of strength. The man who seeks knowledge becomes resilient, versatile, and empowered. He no longer fears challenges, because each obstacle is an opportunity to sharpen skill, expand perspective, and deepen understanding. Learning transforms discomfort into fuel, mistakes into teachers, and uncertainty into possibility. The refusal to learn, by contrast, magnifies fear, magnifies error, and magnifies regret. There is courage in humility. Admitting you do not know, asking questions, and accepting guidance are not signs of weakness, they are proof of strength. The man who continuously learns signals that he values progress over pride, mastery over ego, and growth over convenience. Every effort to expand knowledge compounds into momentum. Skills improve, judgment sharpens, and insight deepens. The world becomes a canvas of possibilities because the man who learns is prepared to act decisively, creatively, and effectively. Refusing to learn also isolates. A mind closed to new ideas alienates allies, mentors, and collaborators. Relationships falter, opportunities vanish, and influence diminishes. A man who refuses knowledge builds walls where bridges could exist. Conversely, the man who learns opens doors, cultivates respect, and commands influence. His presence attracts wisdom, partnership, and opportunity. Every conversation becomes a chance to expand vision, every interaction a chance to grow. Learning is not just power, it is connection, strategy, and leverage. Ask yourself, how often have you rejected knowledge out of pride or fear? How many steps forward have been lost because you refuse to adapt? The man who stops learning stagnates, while the man who embraces knowledge evolves. Your potential is limitless, but only if you are willing to grow. Every lesson you accept, every insight you apply, and every skill you develop propels you closer to mastery. Stop resisting growth and begin building a mind, a life, and a legacy that no circumstance can diminish. Your future is shaped not by what you think you know, but by what you are willing to learn. A man who blames others gives away his power. Every excuse he utters, every finger he points, every justification for failure is a surrender of control. He convinces himself that circumstances, people, or fate are the architects of his life, while he sits idle waiting for change to arrive. But life responds only to action, accountability, and courage. When blame becomes a habit, growth dies. Responsibility is not punishment, it is liberation. The moment you own your choices, your failures, and your victories, you reclaim the authority over your life that no one else can take away. Psychologists call this the locus of control. Those who blame external forces live with an external locus. They see the world as something that happens to them. Those who embrace responsibility develop an internal locus. They see themselves as the driver of their own destiny. Blame is seductive because it offers temporary relief from discomfort, but the cost is permanent weakness. Every excuse you make chips away at your confidence, your influence, and your ability to create change. Accountability, by contrast, builds resilience, sharpens judgment, and commands respect. Consider this: blaming others is a denial of your own agency. Every time you say it's not my fault, you choose powerlessness over progress. Every time you shift responsibility, you place your future in the hands of someone else. True strength comes when you refuse to surrender. When you look in the mirror and confront the truth of your actions, you ignite transformation. You learn faster, act bolder, and achieve more because your energy is no longer scattered on excuses. It is focused on solutions, on action, on mastery. The courage to accept responsibility is transformative. It requires honesty, humility, and self-awareness, yet it delivers freedom that bragging, denial, or blame could never provide. When a man stops blaming, he stops hiding. He confronts challenges head-on, adapts with clarity, and builds influence that cannot be shaken. Every obstacle becomes a test of his skill, patience, and persistence. Every mistake becomes a lesson that compounds into wisdom. The world does not reward those who deflect. It rewards those who rise above, who own their actions, and who carry the weight of consequence with strength and integrity. Blame also corrodes relationships. When you refuse accountability, trust erodes, respect diminishes, and influence fades. People instinctively recognize avoidance. They sense when someone deflects responsibility, and they recoil from weakness. Conversely, a man who takes ownership inspires loyalty, attracts mentorship, and builds unshakable respect. Accountability is magnetic. It draws the right people, the right opportunities, and the right circumstances. It signals that you are reliable, capable, and unafraid to face reality. Ask yourself, how often have you shifted blame to feel safe? How many opportunities have slipped because fear disguised itself as excuse? The man who blames waits for the world to align. The man who owns his life shapes the world to align with his vision. Every choice you take responsibility for strengthens your character, sharpens your influence, and accelerates your journey toward mastery. Stop giving away your power and start reclaiming it. Your destiny is forged not by circumstance, but by the courage to stand accountable and rise above every challenge. A man who fears discomfort limits himself in ways he will never fully realize. Every time he chooses ease over challenge, he contracts his potential. He tells himself that discomfort is dangerous, that struggle is unnecessary, that the familiar is enough. But life rewards courage, effort, and resilience. Growth lives on the edge of discomfort, and transformation requires stepping into what feels uncomfortable. Avoidance is the silent thief of dreams, quietly stealing ambition, confidence, and opportunity, while the mind convinces itself it is being safe. Psychologists have shown that growth occurs outside the comfort zone. Stress, challenge, and discomfort trigger adaptation, resilience, and learning. When a man avoids discomfort, he denies himself the very experiences that build strength. The moments that seem hardest, the situations that push you to your limits, are exactly the ones that forge character, sharpen judgment, and ignite courage. Comfort is the enemy of excellence. Every time you settle for easy, predictable, or painless, you shrink the boundaries of your life and whisper to the world that you are unwilling to fight for your own potential. Imagine how much power is wasted in avoidance. Every fear unchallenged, every risk unattempted, every step backward to avoid difficulty compounds into a lifetime of regret. The man who fears discomfort stagnates. The man who embraces it thrives. Challenges that once seemed terrifying become opportunities to prove strength, tenacity, and resourcefulness. The very act of facing what scares you transforms fear into fuel, doubt into determination, and hesitation into action. Discomfort is not a signal to retreat. It is a signal to advance. Courage is built in the crucible of discomfort. Each time a man faces what he fears, he expands his capacity for life. He learns patience in struggle, humility in failure, and confidence in his ability to endure. Comfort teaches little. Challenge teaches everything. The man who avoids discomfort may feel safe for a moment, but his world remains narrow, predictable, and shallow. The man who embraces struggle experiences depth, richness, and growth that no convenience can replicate. Life rewards those who lean into difficulty, who persevere through uncertainty, and who refuse to let fear dictate their path. Avoidance also limits influence. People are drawn to those who act despite fear, who rise above challenges, and who display courage in the face of adversity. A man who shies away from discomfort signals weakness, indecision, and unreliability. The world responds to strength, resilience, and boldness. When you consistently choose discomfort over ease, you develop a magnetic presence. Your confidence becomes contagious. Your determination inspires others. You become a force that moves not just yourself, but those around you toward higher achievement and possibility. Ask yourself, how often have you chosen comfort over growth? How many chances have you lost because fear disguised itself as caution? The man who avoids discomfort waits for safety that never comes. The man who embraces it steps into power that is always present, always waiting, always earned through courage. Every challenge faced, every fear confronted, every uncomfortable moment embraced strengthens your mind, sharpens your character, and propels you toward a life that few dare to achieve. Discomfort is not a barrier. It is the gateway to the extraordinary. A man who underestimates the value of listening undercuts his own growth. Every word he dismisses, every thought he ignores, every perspective he rejects is a missed opportunity to learn, adapt, and rise. He believes that speaking loudly, asserting dominance, or proving himself is the path to respect, but the truth is far simpler and far more powerful. Wisdom is born in silence, understanding thrives in attentiveness, and influence grows when a man truly listens. Talking without hearing creates noise. Listening with intent creates power. Research shows that humans are wired to respond to empathy, understanding, and connection. When you listen, you gather knowledge, detect opportunities, and build trust. The man who constantly speaks, interrupts, or disregards input is blind to the lessons life is presenting. Every conversation becomes a stage for his ego, rather than a classroom for growth. True strength is not measured in how much one talks, but in how much one absorbs, understands, and applies. Every insight gained through listening becomes a tool for action. Every observation a key to mastery. Every lesson a stepping stone toward excellence. Consider the consequences of ignoring others. When a man refuses to listen, he alienates allies, blinds himself to danger, and misses solutions that were within reach. The world is not static. It is dynamic, complex, and rich with perspectives that can elevate those willing to engage. Listening is not passive. It is deliberate, strategic, and transformative. The man who hones the skill of listening gains clarity, foresight, and wisdom that cannot be achieved through noise, boastfulness, or arrogance. Influence, respect, and power are not taken. They are earned through understanding, empathy, and discernment. The discipline of listening also shapes emotional intelligence. It teaches patience in conflict, humility in disagreement, and empathy in connection. Every relationship strengthens, every collaboration improves, and every opportunity expands when a man prioritizes understanding over speaking. Speaking without listening is reaction. Listening before acting is mastery. It allows a man to respond with precision, to act with strategy, and to lead with authenticity. The ability to absorb without judgment and to integrate knowledge into action is one of the most underrated forms of power. Ask yourself, how often have you missed an opportunity because you were too busy proving yourself? How many lessons have slipped away because you refused to listen? The man who ignores the wisdom of others walks blind, limited, and vulnerable. The man who listens walks informed, empowered, and unstoppable. Listening is not weakness, it is strength in its purest form. It transforms information into insight, conversations into connections, and knowledge into action. Every moment spent truly hearing the world strengthens your mind, sharpens your instincts, and positions you for growth that talking alone can never achieve. A life lived without listening is shallow. A life lived with the discipline of attention is profound. The man who listens is not swayed by noise, is not controlled by impulse, and is not limited by ignorance. He moves with intention, acts with precision, and shapes his reality with insight that others overlook. If you want to rise, if you want to influence, if you want to achieve, you must first learn to hear. Your power, your clarity, and your destiny depend on it. Listening is the gateway to knowledge, the foundation of wisdom, and the path to mastery that no man who talks too much will ever find. A man who refuses to take responsibility steals his own power. Every excuse he utters, every blame he passes, every justification he clings to is a barrier between him and his potential. Life does not hand out success, respect, or fulfillment to those who point fingers. It rewards those who look inward, own their mistakes, and confront the hard truth about themselves. Excuses are a form of self-deception, a silent surrender of control, a quiet admission that he is not willing to grow. True strength begins where excuses end. When a man accepts responsibility, he reclaims his agency. He transforms setbacks into lessons, failures into fuel, and criticism into clarity. Psychology shows that people who internalize accountability experience greater resilience, stronger problem-solving skills, and higher overall satisfaction in life. Blaming others is a shortcut to stagnation. Owning your actions is a bridge to transformation. The moment a man stops pointing outward and starts reflecting inward, he ignites a force within himself that no external circumstance can extinguish. Consider the consequences of evading responsibility. When a man refuses to own his actions, he creates patterns of failure, breeds distrust, and loses the respect of those around him. Every missed deadline, every broken promise, every avoidable mistake becomes a chain that binds him to mediocrity. Life is unforgiving to those who refuse to see their role in their outcomes. Freedom, influence, and success belong to those who step into accountability, who face the truth of their decisions, and who commit to doing better with courage and intention. Responsibility is not a punishment, it is a privilege. It is the acknowledgement that you are the architect of your life, the driver of your destiny, and the captain of your soul. Every choice you make, every action you take, every habit you cultivate is a building block for the life you want. The man who refuses responsibility leaves his life in the hands of circumstance. The man who embraces it takes ownership, shapes reality, and commands respect. There is no shortcut to this. There is only the willingness to face yourself, confront your failures, and rise stronger each time. Ask yourself, how often have you avoided accountability to protect your ego or comfort? How many opportunities have slipped away because you refuse to admit your mistakes? The man who shies away from responsibility remains trapped in the shadows of his own inaction. The man who owns every choice walks forward with clarity, purpose, and unstoppable momentum. Accountability is the cornerstone of mastery, the backbone of integrity, and the engine of personal power. A life without responsibility is fragile. A life embraced with accountability is unshakable. The man who takes responsibility does not wait for others to act, does not search for excuses, and does not allow setbacks to define him. He moves with intention, adapts with precision, and transforms adversity into advantage. If you want to achieve, influence, and rise above mediocrity, you must first own your life completely. Responsibility is the key that unlocks resilience, power, and success. Without it, no amount of talent, ambition, or effort will carry you to your highest potential.